The opinions expressed in this show are the views of the host and not necessarily that of WTRW, 94.3 The Talker, or the Bold Gold Media Group.
The following presentation is brought to you by the host of the program, who is solely responsible for its content.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Make a Change. I'm your host, Terry Martin, along with my producer, Tom Jenkins.
Good afternoon, Terry. How are you?
Very good. Very happy today to have our special guest, Lou Jasikoff, on. And today we're going to be talking about the family unit and how...
And you figure out, I mean, I was here earlier today with Lou doing the Sanity Check show with him, and now he's back again.
There we are.
I just
you
can't
got
get
me back again.
I can't
like
get
a
enough
bad penny showing up.
A what?
You got it.
Dead penny.
No, I said bad penny. Bad penny.
Bad penny.
Absolutely. Terry, thank you for having me on today. This is definitely a different type of show. Make a change. Typically in our show, we're talking politics, and certainly we're always looking for solutions, and that's what this show is all about.
Thank you for coming on.
Oh, I love it.
Appreciate
this is fantastic.
And I mean, in the past with the Make a Change, we've talked about how to make a change internally with your mind. We've talked about how to make a change with your diet. Mm-hmm. We've talked about how to make a change physically with exercise and sleeping right and all of that. And when Terry told me, Lou, you were going to be on, I'm like,
what? How did this happen?
I'm actually excited about this because I cannot wait to hear the other side.
The other side of Lou.
Of Libertarian Lou.
Of Libertarian Lou, that's right. One of the things, Terry, we talked about this yesterday, and I always bring up that, once something is in the books, it's fantastic, and that's something that I believe I'm the first guest that you've actually had on the show. So this is in the books, Tom.
Second guest.
Second guest. Okay.
Yeah, we had an
esthetician.
I can't say that word.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's all good. All right. Well, the second one, and it's in the books now. So now this is the first type of show that I'm doing like this, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit more about not only who I am, but why the philosophy that I have has been shaped through family, growing up in the 50s and 60s, and that whole nine yard, living in Montana, and all those things definitely have shaped how I feel from a political standpoint. But this is not about political. This is all about life in general.
And when I heard you tell me any of your life stories, I knew that they definitely had to be come on air so that everyone can hear this. It was a fantastic journey.
Yeah, it has been, and I've said this to you, and I've said this on many times. I have lived a really fantastic life. I'm in my 60s now, and I still believe I'm just beginning. I mean, and that's something else that we'll get in later on in the show. It really has nothing to do with age. It really has to do with the way you think and how much passion you have in your life and in what you're doing. And that's what very often keeps people young and keeps people moving and certainly the opportunity to make real difference in people's lives. What happened was, for those and for your listeners, I think when we first started talking, we talked about an interview that I had did recently on NPR. And Tom and Terry, it was a political interview, and I think I threw them off because anybody that knows NPR leans a little bit left, and they had asked me from a libertarian standpoint, what is my most important value? What is the most important thing to me? And I think they pretty much were thinking I was going to go less taxes, less government, which
can I guess?
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Will it be exposing the truth?
Well, exposing the truth, but I didn't say that, Tom. What I really said was the most important thing is family values, and you could almost hear the jaw drop. I wasn't in studio, but you could almost hear the jaw drop and say, family values? Why would you say family values? And then I went on and I said, well, let me explain why this is so important to me. I said, what do most people really want in their lives? I mean, we all want the same things. I mean, for the most part. I mean, we want safe and secure roof over our heads. We want clean water. Who doesn't want clean water? Who doesn't want clean air? Who doesn't want affordable health care? Who doesn't want, quality education for our children? So we all want the same things. But how do we get there? And once we have a conversation about how to get there, that's how we make a change. That's how we make a real change. So I went on and I said, listen, I'm a product of the 50s and 60s. My dad was a police officer in New York City. My mom would work part-time. The kids would work part-time. But, you know, Terry, we had time for the Little League and Girl Scouts and recitals, family meals, Sunday meals.
Family meals?
Yes. And isn't that so important right now,
Very
Tom?
much so.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. I try my darndest with my family, like at least once a week, minimum once a week. But if we can do it every night, that'd be wonderful. Where I'd like to sit down, I've got, you know, two little ones, a 3-year-old and soon to be 4 and a soon to be 2-year-old. And I love to sit down with the whole family. Even though the conversations go like this, will you sit down? Will you just sit, eat your supper? Leave your sister alone. Honey, put the fork down. Don't stab your brother, you know.
Right.
But I love it.
Yeah,
because we're all together as a family.
And that's so important. And I think you look at reports these days, the number one thing that a family can do and to help children grow up is the ability to have family meals. So I went on a little bit further with that, and I said, you know, being a product of the 50s and 60s, the federal government took 3% of our wages back then. We could argue over the percentages, and now 26%, which equivocates one person working full-time in the household just to pay for the expanse in government. And are we getting a bang for our buck? And, you know, for myself, I say no. Maybe others say yes. But when I do look around, when I see my own kids, you know, and working as hard as they do, and I'm sure, Terry, you see it, and Tom, you see it. People are running around like chickens with their heads cut off.
Yeah.
And they don't have the time even to sit down for those meals. And that's why, to me, that's so important.
Well, can we go back
Yes.
to your father?
Yeah.
And he was a policeman.
He was.
And he didn't have time in his life and his and the way he worked, but you told me the story how when he retired. You want to tell me that you
my dad, here's the thing. I'm very, very fortunate, but with both my parents and our family unit in general, and I'm talking about aunts and uncles, and I think a lot of that goes back. My grandmother immigrated from Poland, and I think a lot of those values of family and the tight knitness, and a lot and with a lot of ethnic groups, I think, you know, just with the whole thing, with the foods and the way, you know, they expected your family to grow up. But with my dad,
the carpooling,
people,
they knew.
They knew, and it was 1971 when my father retired, and I was in college at the time, and we had a retirement party at my house, and the other wives from the other policemen were there, and they all told me, every single one said, "Boy, we're really going to miss your dad." And it was, you know, why? Well, we knew when Dad was in that carpool, they came right home. They weren't stopping at the bars.
His priority.
My dad's priority was always, always, always the family. Everything was about the family, doing stuff with the family, and it resonated. I mean, it resonated with so many things. He was involved with the church. He was involved with the Boy Scouts. He was involved with, he was the coach on the Little League team. And one of the things that we talked about, Terry, and another thing, and I'd like to bring this up too, was that helping other people, and one of those was with the Polish nuns, right? We grew up the community, and there was a group of Polish nuns on Long Island that lived very close to us, and they had just come over from Poland, and they were extremely, extremely poor. And somehow my dad gets involved with these Polish nuns, and he would go up there and help. And Tom, I still remember the pictures, you know, and he was so enamored because maybe it was, you know, that old European style where, you know, they'd be out, you know, working outside with the wheelbarrows, and 80-year-old, you know, working the grounds. And they had an old age home, Tom, and they were very, very poor. And at the time, Terry, and I think I mentioned this too, nuns were the nuns. It was kind of like, oh, okay, you know, they're disposable, even within the Catholic Church itself. They didn't get much help from the church. They didn't get any help from the federal government. So my dad would go up there, and as we got older, we'd lay in sod, and I had a landscaping business. That was my first business. And he would call up, and it was like, "Lou, I need you up here to lay sod and bring your friends." "Okay, Dad." I'd say, "I'll be up." "Yeah, well, we need you now. We're laying sod."
And you're not getting paid for it.
Oh, of course. No paid at all. But what goes around comes around. And I think that's another thing that we could certainly touch on is that the seeds that you sow come back. And as when the Pope became Pope, the Polish Pope was there, and they were from the same community, and they started to grow, and they're worldwide now as the Sisters of St. Benedict. And to this day, they don't take typically men into the senior home, only because it's too disruptive, and we could get into that whole thing later on. But we are grandfathered in, and they said no matter where we are in the world, we always had a place. If we got sick, that we were able to, go into the Sisters of St. Benedict. But I think the most telling thing was my dad had a stroke and eventually died from that stroke, and he was up in Albany, New York. My mom and dad lived in Saratoga, and the nuns were from Long Island, which is quite a hike. It's about a 4-hour hike. Every single day while he was in that hospital, in that coma, the nuns would drive, 4 nuns would drive from Long Island up to Albany into the hospital, say the rosary in Polish, and go back. And to me, that was, just what goes around comes around.
You said something early in the beginning of the story about how your dad would help these people, and how it appears to me, just through my experiences, how people don't help other people unless they're getting something from it.
Right.
I learned a word a little while ago, and I use it as often as I can. It's called altruistic.
Yes.
And altruism. And I think that's just so stinking important. And a friend of mine said it to me, the best to describe altruism is do something nice for somebody, but don't get caught doing it.
That's it. Bingo. That's right.
And it makes such just my experience and my opinion, it makes such a bigger difference. And not even if it comes back around again. So what if it doesn't?
Right.
You still did the human thing. Right. And that, in my opinion, is what is just so important. But to allude back to what you were getting to, where do we find the time to do that now with... You got to work 1, 2 jobs sometimes, both parents, 2 jobs with the family. I mean, how do you get involved with those things?
It can be even the slightest thing, because it does feel better to give than to get.
Absolutely.
And so these anything small, still, we can all find a little bit of time to do something.
I have actually a funny story if you want to hear it about that. I was with a friend, and we were actually just talking about altruism, and we stopped at a grocery store, and we just had to pick up 2 things that I had to take home. And I grabbed the shopping cart that was laying in the middle of the parking lot, and I'm taking it down, and he goes, well, we have to get a whole bunch of stuff? I said, no. He goes, what do you do with the shopping cart? I said, well, I'm just going to put it back. Why? I go, I don't know. It's just the right thing to do. He calls me up 2 weeks later. He goes, dude, guess what I did, man? Guess what I did? I said, what'd you do? He goes, well, I went over to whatever store it was, and I picked up all the carts in the parking lot and took it down to the front. And I'm like,
that was nice.
I called him an idiot. He goes, why? I said, because you could have got the cart retriever fired. So 1 cart maybe, but not all of them. He just wanted to do something altruistically, But I could not stop laughing. I'm like, your heart's in the right place, man. But sometimes you just got to think a little bit more. But I like that, just those little tiny things. You go into a public bathroom, you wash your hands, you throw the paper towel on, and you miss the garbage, and there's a whole bunch of paper towels around. Pick them all up.
Right.
Why not? And wash your hands again, but still pick them all up.
Yeah.
Why not?
Certainly, we have talked about, and we've mentioned, and certainly my co-host, Tea Party Mike Lacey, he's now living in Texas, and there is a different philosophy for those that have traveled the country. And one of the things that I have pointed out in the past is a difference in way people treat people. One of the things that I noticed living in Montana, and I brought this up numerous times, and then after I came back, I was living in New Jersey at a time, was that cart. When you go to the supermarkets in Montana, and maybe it's changed now since I left, but when I was out there, that was something that I used to recognize. You go to the Walmarts or the Kmarts, the carts were always put away. You wouldn't think of leaving your cart or letting it roll down into somebody's side of the door. You wouldn't think about it. You would just normally you would just you'd almost be embarrassed to leave your cart out in the lot. I mean, it was just something that, you respected. And that's the other thing. If you want respect, you give respect. And that's something else. The small things. Talking about small things.
Why don't we get into that, and we're going to take a quick break.
Fantastic.
Okay, we'll talk about respect. We'll talk about some more small things. I'm really enjoying this conversation. And this is a side of you, Lou, that I'm not used to seeing, and I'm really enjoying. I mean, I enjoy the political talk, too.
Absolutely.
But you know what I mean.
Right.
So we are going to take a quick break. This is Make a Change on 94.3 FM The Talker. I am Tom Tom Jenkins with your host, Terry Martin, and the guest today from Sanity Check is Libertarian Lou Jasikoff. And if you've got any questions for Terry, feel free to give her a call at any time at 866-646-3374, or check out her webpage at MederiClinicals.com, MEDERI, MederiClinicals.com. This is Make a Change on 94.3 FM The Talker. We'll be right back. Mederi Clinicals, a unique skincare company, has a complete skincare line for men and women. From anti-aging to glycolic and even a clinical line for sensitive skin, Mederi Clinicals is for you. Their number one product? Forgiveness. It's the secret to younger looking and younger acting skin. You can experience the transformation with fewer wrinkles, firmer skin, and a more youthful, radiant complexion. Treat aging, sun damage, rosacea, and more with Forgiveness. Plus, buy one bottle of Forgiveness, get one lip enhancing complex for free. Forgiveness. Apply it morning and night and keep forgiving and forgetting all through the day. Make a change with Mederi Clinicals. Balance, restore, look, and feel new. Mederi Clinicals, a complete skincare company for men and women. Call 866-646-3374 or check out MederiClinicals.com. MEDERI Clinicals.com. Welcome back to Make a Change on 94.3 FM The Talker. I am Tom Jenkins, along with your host of Make a Change, Terry Martin. And our special guest, actually, I don't even think he left the building since this morning, is Lou Jasikoff from Sanity Check. He's on here every Saturday morning, 7 to 8 a.m. on 94.3 FM The Talker. And we're seeing a different side of Lou today, kind of talking about society and family values, which is actually what's most important in Lou's life. And but right before the break, we were talking about little things, doing little things, altruism, treating each other with respect. And Lou was about to get into some more little things that we were talking about.
And certainly we were talking about family and how lucky I was to have been able to grow up with a very, very strong family unit, and how important that is. And unfortunately, many people don't have that. But that does not mean that a lot of the things that we're talking about, they can't implement even in their own lives. And one of the things we talked about yesterday, Terry, when we were talking about the show and what we were going to talk about, is some of the little things. And the most important things to me, and I brought some of them with me today, is stuff that my mom, and specifically more so my dad in this particular instance, is some of the gifts that I received.
I love those ideas.
Yeah, and but anyway, like, what he would do is he would write a plaque or give me a plaque and give my mom and our other siblings different things throughout his life. When we were going through things that, maybe hard times or even good times, or things that were, important to him. And it would be a plaque, and it would be something that was engraved. And to this day, we forget all the Christmas presents and all the other presents, the birthday presents and all those things. But the things that we do remember are the things that are important to the heart. And we're going to get into the penny thing. But Tom, it's like, go placidly amid the noise and the haste and remember what peace can be found in silence. That was Desiderata, and I wrote a whole piece with that in the Independent Gazette, in our newspaper. But on the back, this is what my dad wrote me. He says, Lou, I would like to think that these were tried and tested and passed down through the ages from those so great to those we love. Those are the important things. This is why, I at one time in my life, I had memorized Desiderata, right, to, avoid loud and aggressive people because they're vexations to the spirit. These are the things where you can make a change. When you look at what's going on in your life, and how, sometimes you're just bombarded with stuff that, if you could step back and just say, wait a minute, why are these things happening? And then you think about this, go placidly amid the noise and the haste and remember what peace can be found in silence. And that many times, you could go down to the riverbank or walk through the pines and just think for yourself. And this is, and that's why those things are so important. Go ahead.
You had it memorized for the times when you really will need it. And
Absolutely.
That's what your father gave you.
Yeah.
Now, being that we're on the radio, I want to describe what Lou's actually holding. It actually is a plaque. It looks like it's on just a shaved piece of tree, which looks beautiful.
It is, right.
It is beautiful. And there's the etching, the engraving on the front.
Right.
But right on the back is the actual handwritten message to Lou from his dad. And
part of Desirado, therefore be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whenever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham and drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be careful, strive to be happy.
And he's still speaking to you today. And that's why he wanted you to have this.
Yeah.
And you'll look at that forever, even if it isn't after a while. Sometimes those things that we memorize, you forget.
And it
So
becomes
it's good
part
to
of
still have the plaque.
and it becomes part of and we were speaking about this yesterday also. You could make that change in your life now, today. This is when you start making those changes. I mean, some of us have been fortunate enough to maybe, start when we're very young, but how many people are going through tough times and doing all, just living life? And you can make those changes today, and it's within yourself, within ourselves. Nobody else. I can't help you, Terry. I can't help you, Tom. I mean, we could talk about it. You might get a helping hand, but at the end of the day, it's within us, inside of us, that can make that change. And I know you talk about that all the time.
I was so upset yesterday when we were talking, and he told me all these lovely things that his father did and things that Lou will tell you that he has done. I said, I wish I could go back and do some of those things. I never heard of these kind things to do. And he just let me know. It isn't too late.
No.
I can do these things right today.
Right.
So when we're long gone.
Right.
Okay.
My number one gift, and I've said this, is what is class? And this is another thing that my dad had given me. I had a business in Montana, and it was, we were going just like anybody that's in business. You have your ups, you have your downs. It was a very stressful time in my life. And it's called What is Class? And I've given this to a few people and returned the favor to them. And class never runs scared. It is sure-footed and confident in the knowledge that you can meet life's challenges head-on and handle whatever comes along. One of the things that we talked about too, class never makes excuses. It takes its lumps and learns from its past mistakes. Class is considerate of others. Mm-hmm. It knows that good manners is nothing more than a series of petty sacrifices. That is something that I speak of too, Tom, is that once something is in the books, and it could be something small, it could be something big. We had, after I came back from Montana, I did another stint in the corporate world, and very successful, but that's just not me. I've always wanted to have my own business and feel free. That freedom, that libertarian freedom, that's who I am. Whether I succeed or whether I fail, I mean, we're only here for but a speck of time. And to make that difference, and everybody has to follow their own course in their life, and certainly I have. And one of the things, we were hitting it good. We were very successful, me and my partner, and there was no set of scales. And my dad always wanted to go to Alaska. That was like one of his deals, right? So I had been to Alaska before and traveled the Alcan and traveling around all North America, which we've talked about. And sometimes you could make these trips and do these trips. We talk about Lou's El Cheapo vacations. and I tell people, hey, man, do it. You could go up to Lake George very easily from here in Fort Ticonderoga and show your children history and what it's all about. The French and Indian Wars. My kids, if they were hearing this show, French and Indian Wars, Dad. Last of the Mohegans, but we have that all around here, and you could do that very easily. Well, anyway, we were hitting it pretty good, and I knew my dad always wanted to go to Alaska, so here we go, and I was able to get tickets for Mom and Dad and get a berth on the ferry in Alaska. So the first thing that happens, I give them the trip, and it's an extensive trip, but it's on the ferry, and my mom calls me a month later or whatever, and she says, Lou, Dad's having a little hard time traveling over the mountains because they were going to have to drive from New York out to Washington State and go over the mountains. She says, do you think you could take us? I said, Mom, I can't take a month off. I said, but I'll think about it. That was the mistake, Tom. That was because my think and mom's think are two different things.
Right.
You know, my think is I'm really going to think about it, but mom's think, Lou's taking us to Alaska.
Yeah.
So here we go, right? So next thing I know, we're talking about. I don't know how I could do this. And meanwhile, like I said, I had a partner where there was no set of scales, and we're going to get into that a little bit too. In the meantime, what he says to me, he says, "Are you nuts?" He says, well, you think, you know, maybe we won't pick up a car. We had a transport business, and we were picking up cars for Ford and Chrysler throughout the tri-state area, and we picked up more cars, off-lease cars, than any other company at the time, and bringing them to auctions, and we'd ship them, you know, out on rail to other auctions and stuff like that. So we were, like I said, we were hitting it pretty good, and we were able to afford this trip. And so anyway, my partner says, "You're nuts." He says, "You're going." So sure enough, I had my conversion van and mom and dad, and I take my daughter with me at the time, and there we go. We go out to, we're now on a trip for a month to going out to Alaska. Now, once again, I mentioned my dad was a police officer in New York City. And that mindset was, you know, if you had an earring, if your hair was a little long, you weren't completely right, okay? There was something there that maybe, you know, maybe go get a haircut, you know?
What's you dirty hippie, you.
So here we show up at the ferry, right? And the first thing he sees is all these kids pitching tents on top of the ferry. He said, "Look." He said, "What kind of place is this?" And the whole top of the ferry, you actually, Terry, you see the tents being pitched and all these things. So I said, "Dad, don't worry about it." And once again, the ferry is a different way of traveling up there as opposed to the cruise ships. You really do take the inside passage. You have to wait for the tides to change, and you're hitting towns that, you know, are not normally on the routes of the cruise ships. So anyway, we get on the thing, and I remember the change in his attitude. There must have been like two 80-year-old men that looked as though they could own the boat. And they take their bedroll and they roll it down, and they're going to sleep on the floor. And then my dad said, "Wow, you know, this is the way people travel. This had nothing to do with, you know, sleeping on the decks." And that's what people did. You went there and they slept on the decks, and sometimes, you know, you were on that ship for days at a time. And at the end of the day, I swear, Terry, to the day he died, he said, anybody he talked to, you got to go to Alaska and you got to take that ferry boat because that is the only way to travel. And that's what I usually say sometimes, it's in the books. When things are in the books and you make those petty sacrifices,
right,
you can't take that away. That time could have come and gone. We would have picked up some more cars. We would have done some other things. But we have this memory. We're able to sit here now and talk. And that's why I do encourage people to take the time off to do things that a lot of times you don't even think you can do. It's just a petty sacrifice. Like today, later on today, as soon as we're done with our show this afternoon, I need to go down to Harrisburg. And I'm going to go see other people down there. And it's not maybe on my top 10, but it's something that I feel to do in my own business, and I'm sure you still do it in your own business. I would go out and not just visit the people that are the bosses or the people that are giving you the orders. Many times I would just go out and visit the people that were doing the work. Right. And it went so much farther. And I guess that's all I'm saying is that sometimes, so often, we put things off, whether it's visiting people in the hospital or just taking the time out to do something with your family. Sometimes, like, you know, it's so easy to say, I don't have the time, or I can't, or make an excuse that maybe, you know, I should be doing something else. But I got to say that if you start thinking maybe in other terms, like, it's in the books. I did it. Just like this show. I love it. This to me was when you asked us, says, you know what? This is going to be in the books. They won't be able to take this away. And Tom already said he's going to keep this around just in case.
I was happy you said yes. I was surprised when you said yes. Thank you.
So all those things, you know. So anyway, you know, going back to that whole set of scales a little bit, and it is a philosophical difference, and my partner was born and raised in New Jersey, Italian descent, very, very much Italian, very much in the sense that very much New Jersey, hardworking, you know, worked hard, and then here I come, this guy out of nowhere from Montana. Even though I was born in New York City and raised on Long Island, having lived in Montana, I did have a little bit of a different philosophy. And anyway, once again, we were hitting it pretty good. So we had a shore house. We had a shore house in Point Pleasant. And anybody that is familiar with the Jersey Shore, it's right there. It's right kind of smack dab in the middle of everything. And it was like 5 houses off the boardwalk and right on the beach. It was fantastic. We'd go down there, and when we walked out the back door, we were on the beach.
Why are you here? That's my question.
Well, people say the same thing when I show them pictures of Montana and why you're doing these things. But that's another story. And actually, why I am here was because of my family. We had me and my wife had started. We were raising our family out in Montana, and even though my family and siblings would come out and visit, we had reached an age where we wanted our kids to spend more time with their grandparents. And we had sold a business. It was a restaurant motel, and philosophy had changed there too, the drinking and driving and all that stuff. So we had gotten out of that business. Eventually we got it back, only because the people that bought it couldn't pay for the whole thing. But we came back so that we could because I thought it was important that my kids got to know their grandparents and be able to spend more time with it. But anyway, with the New Jersey thing, so here we go and working hard and hitting it good, and we were down on the Jersey Shore. And once again, with no set of scales, it wasn't like, I'm working 40 hours and he's working 60 hours. We knew it had to be done, and that's the beauty of what we had. It really was. When I say what we had, and once again, something that changes the way you think, and why I say you're only here for a speck of time. He dropped dead when he was 33 years old. Going there Saturday morning and seeing, my best friend laying on the floor, it changes you, and it does make a difference. But once again, there's no set of scales, and I would tell Tony, I said, Tone, I says, man, I says, I don't know if I get this lifestyle anymore. I says, I see how hard everybody's working in Jersey and New York and Long Island, and the commuting and spending all the time. And, they work so hard all week to get off at 3 o'clock to beat the traffic to get down to the shore, and they're spending $500, for hotel rooms, and $500 for the weekend to, on food. And God help the guy if it's bad weather, because his wife or girlfriend, she's complaining she can't go on the beach. The only thing he's thinking about the whole time is, am I leaving at 2 o'clock on Sunday, or am I leaving at 8 o'clock to beat the traffic? And then I start thinking about my life in Montana and what it was like in Montana. And, I get off at 5 o'clock. At 5:15, I'm loading up the pickup truck. The wife or the girlfriend's getting in the car, the dog's jumping in the back, the food's back there, the beer's back there, my friends are meeting us at the lake 10 minutes away. And I said, we're doing the same things. We're eating just as good. We're drinking just as good. You're hanging out with your friends and all the other stuff that goes on at just
Make
as
different
good.
choices.
And the only difference was the guy in Montana didn't have the $500 in his pocket.
Right.
So when you start thinking in that sense, It really does make, you're doing all the same things. And once again, Tom, going back to El Cheapo Vacations, and you brought this up, it's not always about the money. You can make those changes, and you can make those changes in your life to make it.
And many times they're better times.
And many times they're better times. That's right.
The trips that you have to think about what to do to have fun.
How many times have we said, I need a vacation from my vacation?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So on that note, let's take one more break here.
Okay.
You are listening to Make a Change on 94.3 FM The Talker. Your host, Terry Martin, is here. I am Tom Jenkins, our special guest, Lou Jasikoff, and we'll be right back. Mederi Clinicals, a unique skincare company, has a complete skincare line for men and women. From anti-aging to glycolic and even a clinical line for sensitive skin, Mederi Clinicals is for you. Their number one product? Forgiveness. It's the secret to younger looking and younger acting skin. You can experience the transformation with fewer wrinkles, firmer skin, and a more youthful, radiant complexion. Treat aging, sun damage, rosacea, and more with Forgiveness. Plus, buy 1 bottle of Forgiveness, get 1 lip enhancing complex for free. Forgiveness. Apply it morning and night and keep forgiving and forgetting all through the day. Make a change with Mederi Clinicals. Balance, restore, look, and feel new. Mederi Clinicals, a complete skincare company for men and women. Call 866-646-3374 or check out MederiClinicals.com. MEDERI Clinicals.com. Welcome back to Make a Change on 94.3 FM The Talker. I'm Tom Jenkins, along with your host, Terry Martin. Our special guest in the studio today, Lou Jasikoff from Sanity Check. Libertarian Lou is here. We're seeing a whole different side of him. And more or less making a change. This show, we're talking about making a change in just your behavior, in your mindset when it comes to other people. And I wish I was recording this so I could play it back. But during the break, Louis, you had said something that actually I want to hear more about it, if you don't mind. I'm going to take this in a completely different direction. I'm going way off script here.
He's going to throw me off here now.
No, you said something very important that I think is very important. You said you never know how you can make a change in somebody until after the fact. You don't know what your behavior is going to do.
That's right.
You don't know until you may never know.
That's right.
And I'd love for you to go more into that. Tell the story about the will, real quick, if you wouldn't mind.
This was an individual that I had known. She had worked for me and my wife, and as a car dealer, I used to call her Annie Oakley. She had certainly that bad boy syndrome, and just as you know, Terry, or folks maybe out there, you know, she just like she had an hankering for, you know, the guys that are on the maybe the motorcycles, whatever. Not that that's bad boys, but you know that rough and tough, the cowboy, the Marlboro man type thing. You know, you'll meet the guy in the bar and he'll be the guy starting the fights, doing all these other things. But in that particular case, what we were just talking about was in the will and having left some of her prized possessions and saying, out of all the men that I had met in my life, that was somebody that I had treated her with respect over all those years, the 20 years of being a car dealer and everything else, and she wanted to do something special. When I want to get back to this class thing a little bit, and then I promise, Terry, we're gonna get to that penny thing, because I know you really like that.
I did.
And I think that's really pretty cool. But when we talk about class bespeaks an aristocracy. That has nothing to do with ancestors or money. The most affluent blue blood can be totally without class, while the descendant of a Welsh miner may ooze class from every pore. Once again, this was something that was given to me, and still my most prized possession as far as gifts go. I mean, certainly you have your prized possessions of your children and the ones that around you, that your loved ones and all that stuff. But as far as a gift that somebody had given me, this is still my favorite.
Your gift of guidance.
There you go. I haven't thought about that one, but that's exactly what it is. Class never tries to build itself up by tearing others down. How many people in our lives? That's what it's all about. It's so often that this one did that or that one did that. Instead of looking at people and saying, wow, you know, think of it in different terms. Class is already up and need not strive to look better by making others look worse. Class can walk with kings and keep its virtue, and talk with crowds and keep the common touch. Everyone is comfortable with the person who has class because he is comfortable with himself. And it ends with this. If you have class, you don't need much of anything else. If you don't have it, no matter what else you have, it does not matter, and it doesn't make much of a difference. And that was a time that I was going through a very rough time. And on the back it says, Lou, if one has been tested, you have. This belongs to you. So I'll gather my thoughts here for a moment. And so pennies. So we talked about pennies. So once again with Dad, Mom and Dad grew up in Lower Manhattan on 7th Street. Just a few blocks down from one another. Mom's family had a pretty nice apartment, and that's where we used to have our Christmases. And I've spoke of that, you know, Christmas Eve and those traditions going down with my uncle. My uncle's in the hospital now, and I've been visiting him on Wednesday. But on Christmas Eve, we would go down to First Avenue and 7th and get the biggest Christmas tree we could find, because they had the big cathedral ceilings, and going back, and we set the tree up, and the guys would do the tree, and Mom and my babci, which is the grandmother, and my other aunts would be making the pierogies and the kapusta and all the stuff that would go with a traditional Polish Christmas Eve meal. Yeah, you can see that, right? So anyway, and now my dad was a little different. He grew up down the block, and they grew up in a very small bedroom or apartment. The bathroom was shared. It was a shared bathroom in the hall with 3 other families. And my dad shared his little tiny bedroom, very tiny bedroom, with my uncle, his brother, and my 2 aunts were in a very other small bedroom, and believed that my grandparents would be in the living room, and that was kind of their room out there, you know. But anyway, so I would go up and visit. You know, my grandmother was still living there, and I would go into my dad's room, and he had the bottom drawer. Or actually, I think even half of the bottom drawer was like his area. And I was always fascinated, Terry, and this has to be in the, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11 years old I was. And in the drawer itself was this box, and there were half pennies in there.
Yeah, I said I never heard of a half penny.
It was a half penny, right? Mm-hmm. So I said to my father, I said, Dad, why didn't Grandpa save more half pennies? I said, I'd love to have more half pennies. And he said, well, Lou, we probably couldn't afford the half pennies. Mm-hmm. From that day forward, I started saving pennies. And I always thought that maybe one day, pennies would be gone, and I would pass it on my grandkids. It'll probably be my great-grandkids at this point saying, boy, I'm really great-grandpa saved pennies because there's no longer pennies around. I mean, it sounds crazy, but, it's one of those things that, once they're gone, once again, I mean, half pennies, like you said, you never heard of half penny. Well, there was half pennies, and there's going to come a time.
Were you a teenager at the time?
I don't even think I was, maybe 12, maybe I just started becoming.
Grandchildren? That's what I felt bad about. How come I didn't think that way, when I was younger?
Well, because it was I was thinking back with my grandfather and sitting there with my dad in that very, very small apartment, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, boy, I wish my grandfather had saved more half pennies. So I started thinking, and then I was saving dimes and nickels, and that's another whole story because my 2 sisters, which I love dearly, decided they needed those silver dimes and quarters for other things besides me saving them. But that's a different thing. So anyway, as I got a little older, those big Crayola crayons, you could buy, you could get them, or you could go to any of the stores now. Some of them are smaller. So I got these big Crayola crayon things. And I started writing.
They were like a pencil holder?
A big pencil holder, right. Mm-hmm. And they're tall. They're about this big, okay? And a small, thin pencil, and it holds a lot of stuff in there. And I started writing, to whom it may concern. And I was writing to my grandparents, my grandkids. And basically these same messages. It was like, if I never meet you, I don't know if I'm ever going to have grandkids. I don't know who you are, but always strive to be your best. Live your life. Don't let anybody else live your life.
Tom? Amazing, isn't it?
And then I throw nickels and pennies in, and it's almost like a time machine. I don't know what's in there. And I think I told you, some of the things were very simple. Like I just did it for my new granddaughter. I just wrote a little note, Haley, you're very sick today. I put the date, you're having a rough time. Love, Grandpa.
These are the small things we were talking about.
And those are the small things. And I don't know. And over the time, and I know a lot of the things that I had put in that time machine for my grandkids, they're going to love some of the stuff because it's stuff that, that my children.
I'm just sitting here shaking my head.
Whether it's their businesses they got into and failed, that business card is in there. Your dad started this business. I don't know if it's going to last. I don't know if it's not. I can tell you right now, they didn't last. But once again, they're going to be able to go back and say, hey, Dad, I didn't know you had a tree cutting business, or Dad, I didn't know, you had a landscaping business, or Mom, I didn't know you started a bakery and it didn't work. Those things that will come and go and pass, and we forget all about those things. So, so what happens is that, with this, once again, it's a way of keeping I guess those roots that you talked about, letting folks get back to the roots, and something else that I always talk about, it really discourages me. And right now, in the Independent Gazette, we're doing this thing for custody for cash, and it really upsets me when I see mommy or daddy or these grandparents fighting over their children. Like, I'm going to keep them away from this one and keep them. I got to tell you, you're only going to hurt yourself, because children, people. And we see it all the time, like people that have been separated at birth or somewhere down the road, all of a sudden they want to know, hey, they're out searching. Some people search their whole life just to get back. And yet some people right now, I'm saying, why? Why not? They're going to want to know sooner or later, and they're only going to be bitter at you, if you try to constantly keep fighting about that. They want to know what their roots is about. And that was something else that, as a youngster, I remember sitting on my grandmother's bed, and I asked her to write down her history, where she came from, while she was still alive. And that's in that time machine. And I got to tell you, all my aunts, my uncles, my parents, they've all asked for copies of those. Say, how cool is that? Bob, she sat down there and wrote down who her grandparents were and where in Poland they were from, and her recollection. So if anybody ever wants to go back and search, they could do those things. And these are very simple things to do, and I encourage anybody to do that. I mean, it's that doesn't cost anything. And save pennies and nickels.
I thought my list was already full, but now I just have such a big list after listening to you that I want to go back and do.
I'm actually going to start picking up a pen and writing things on paper instead of everything on a computer anymore. That's a great idea.
That's a very good idea.
Let's take one more quick break. When we come back, I want to hear how more ways we can make a change.
Okay.
Family-wise, society-wise, etc., etc. This is Make a Change on 94.3 FM The Talker with your host, Terry Martin. I'm Tom Jenkins with our guest, Lou Jasikoff. We'll be right back. Mederi Clinicals, a unique skincare company, has a complete skincare line for men and women. From anti-aging to glycolic and even a clinical line for sensitive skin, Mederi Clinicals is for you. Their number one product? Forgiveness. It's the secret to younger looking and younger acting skin. You can experience the transformation with fewer wrinkles, firmer skin, and a more youthful, radiant complexion. Treat aging, sun damage, rosacea, and more with Forgiveness. Plus, buy one bottle of Forgiveness, get one lip enhancing complex for free. Forgiveness. Apply it morning and night and keep forgiving and forgetting all through the day. Make a change with Mederi Clinicals. Balance, restore, look, and feel new. Mederi Clinicals, a complete skincare company for men and women. Call 866-646-3374 or check out MederiClinicals.com. MEDERI Clinicals.com. Welcome back to Make a Change on 94.3 FM The Talker. I'm Tom Jenkins, along with your host, Terry Martin, and our special guest today from Sanity Check, Lou Jasikoff, Libertarian Lou, having some just wonderful conversation here, wonderful discussions, and I'm loving these stories about the pennies and the little notes, and I don't know how you find the time to do all this stuff with being editor-in-chief of the Independent Gazette, plus the radio show. But and it costs nothing to do those little things.
Yeah, exactly right.
Now
That's exactly what we're talking about.
As we're talking, you keep picking up a book over there.
I do.
What is it, and why do you keep picking that up?
Well, one of the things Terry had mentioned, what we wanted to talk about is how can we make that change? Let's talk about some solutions. Certainly one of the books that actually my daughter had given to me, and she had it was one of her class assignments, and it's called The Emperor's Handbook, and it was Marcus Aurelius, who was one of those Roman emperors, and it was really remarkable as I was reading what his thoughts were. This is, as I understand it, the favorite book for Bill Clinton. Most of our presidents have read this book, and they just love it. And basically, so much of it is and a lot of the things that I've underlined, and Terry, once again, giving stuff to other people. This is what I do. You sit home and you whether stuff is on the background, Tom, and sometimes people say, how do you find time to do it? Well, you just multitask. I mean, the TV's on in the background or some music's on in the background, and you're sitting there and you have an opportunity to read or plant or do some other things. You're just out doing a number of things at the same time. And so what I do is I underline, I put notes in it, and then sign it and give the book away to those that I feel would appreciate it. But the whole thing about Marcus Aurelius is it's up to you. It's up to us. And that's an exact quote. He carried his leadership principle, it's up to you, into all areas of responsibility. So when we say how we can make a change, all the things Lou Jasikoff says and Terry Martin says and Tom Jenkins says, that could be helpful. But at the end of the day, it has to land on you, and you have to be able to make that decision for yourself that you have to make a change. And whatever that change might be. Sometimes it could be diet or lifestyle or whatever, but you have to have it inside you. And I like to say also that it has nothing to do with age. I mean, and certainly as I've gotten older and I go talk to some, groups that some senior groups, this is the time to do that. Terry, we touched on a few things yesterday also, is the people that have made huge changes in society. Some of them died very early. Mm-hmm. And you have, and it didn't take them very long time to make those huge changes, whether it was Martin Luther King or Kennedy, to people that have died early in their life. And yet then, you look at Mother Teresa, who didn't get into it until older, mm-hmm. or Grandma Moses, so it really doesn't have to do with age. It has to do with the mindset and saying, if you want to make a change, if the name of your show, if you want to make a change, if you really want to affect people's lives, then do it. You can. And It doesn't, the hardest thing sometimes is when you have physical, when your health is not good. And I give so much credit for those that have overcome that, mm-hmm. When they have, health issues and stuff. But outside of that, this is not about age. This is not about feeling young, feeling old.
I'm just sitting here shaking. Yes.
I mean, get out and do it. And very often those that have gotten into our senior years a little bit, or, your grandkids are just starting to grow up. You have the time to really make those changes. Some of the concepts that he talked about is, it all came down to Marcus' belief in that we are what we think. There's no reason why you shouldn't live here on earth as you like to live in the hereafter. That to me, I mean, mm-hmm. that's, why not? You know what? I mean, if you think about it, it could be scary to some folks say, but is this the way it's going to be later on? I mean, mm-hmm. so make that change. Get out there and really make a change. But as long as nothing drives me out from the room, I'm a free man, and no one can keep me from living as I like. And those are some of the things that we had put out, I mean, even before. And that was a message that even in those penny things, mm-hmm. is live your life. Grandchild, granddaughter, grandson, live your life, because it's your life. We're only here for a speck of time. And then make a difference. Fast. Why are we here? Why are certain people that come into your life? To me, that's very comforting at times, especially when you have somebody like my partner die at 33 years old. I'm still talking about him.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A father that is now passed. I've had other people in my life that have died at an earlier age, and yet I said, were they there to affect me, to influence me, so maybe we can influence others? And sometimes that's a very comforting thing, especially in times of such deep sorrow. Thank you for the time that you were able to spend with me. The conviction that we are what we think ought to change our feelings about others as well. The issue is no longer what others do, but what thought processes lead them to do it. Our understanding of their thoughts will probably change how we feel about them and what they have done. I mean, to me, this, and I encourage, there's all great books out there. Mm-hmm. But this is one of those books that you can leave by your nightstand, and it's not like they're like quatrains or whatever. There's just segments that you could read, and it's not a book that you would necessarily have to read through the whole time. But it's very inspirational for those that know who I am, and certainly political. He writes about re-examining our concept of freedom, and to ask ourselves how much political freedom is worth. if we are the slaves of false opinion and harmful desire? Are we really free in our doing if we're not free in our thinking? You know, and going back and once again, how do you change things, and how do we make a real change? One of the reasons we started the Independent Gazette, and certainly so thankful having the opportunity to be on here, 94.3 FM, The Talker, to be able to exchange ideas, because so often we don't get the real news, or we don't get the real information. How do you base a decision when it's based on false information?
You know, I also think as individuals, people think the world is so big that they're almost afraid to step out. But if they just do what they really want to do, if it's good, it just happens. So people don't have to be so worried about not thinking that they have anything to give, because they do.
You know, I think you just threw me a real softball, because I had another one, and it's a very small, I just have a photocopy of it, but one of the other things that my dad gave me was think. And basically is, when you think you're so big, so important, stick your hand in a bucket, swish it around, make big splashes like you're something important, pull it out, and see how long you're important for. You know, once again, you know, sometimes we have these in mind that we're so, but it's a big universe, is it? And we're, you know, we're just a small piece, and so important that we can influence others. And one of the reasons, once again, is why it's not politics for politics' sake. At one time when I was younger, I thought I was going to go, you know, I was in a prep seminary. I thought I was going to become a missionary. And I think part of that is that you want to make, and I know that's what you're doing too, Terry. I mean, you want to be able to make a real change and make a real change in our environment. And once again, for those that are seniors, I mean, people that, you know, maybe in their 20s and 30s and 40s, you're very busy raising a family, and that's so important. And I think, you know, I'm so grateful for having gone through that. You know, those are one of the things that I say.
Grateful for every day I hear in you. I see it.
Maybe that's one of the reasons why, you know, like, you know, sometimes maybe that's what you were only here for. Is to raise that child that is going to make a difference down the road. Mm-hmm. So it's so important that, you know, what you're doing, and once again, it's what's up here, it's what you're thinking, it's what, you know, if you're not free in your thinking, if you're bogged down in all this other stuff, and once you're free to think, there, you know,
doors open.
All doors
life changes.
Well, all doors are open, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned before, maybe we need to start doing a little bit more writing. Tom mentioned that also, you know, instead of maybe just being on the computer, maybe we start writing stuff and getting that out there, mm-hmm. you know, because it's, you know, and to me, that's how we can make a real change. It's almost a mindset that it's not about the government. It's not about you. It's not about Tom. It's here. It's mm-hmm. what I can do.
We need our families back. That is what we need to change the rest of the world. Our families have started. It has
right.
fallen apart, because as I was reading in a book, how it's the world is, we have, as we get older, we have the snowbirds, the grandparents are leaving. We don't want them to really leave. We need their knowledge for our younger generation.
Knowledge. Boy, oh boy.
We need their help.
Right, absolutely. And knowledge is so important. I think that's a nation of strangers that you had mentioned, and that's something that I'm going to look a little bit more into. But basically, that's what you know, what you're saying is that it's not just it's just not.
We're suffering without our families.
We're suffering without our families,
right.
and suffering without our roots, suffering mm-hmm. about where we're coming from, where we're going. How do you know where you're going if you don't even know where you're coming from, i.e., if you have an opportunity to leave some of that for your kids or grandkids, or you know, even friends and family sometimes. I mean, it's important to leave that legacy and let them know that, you know where they came from, and it's important. I think that's why, you know, when you look at the Christmas Eves, and you know, you just said, like, you know, the Christmas Eve dinner. I'm glad that we've been able to keep those traditions. It's great that you see people, and especially here in Northeast Pennsylvania, because you have a lot of those ethnic groups that still hang on to that, and that's, to me, is very, very important.
And for the people, even myself, a lot of those traditions that we let drift and leave us, we just have to grab them, pull it back together, and maybe even start new traditions, but not to let anything fall apart any more than it has.
Why not start new traditions?
Or start a new tradition.
Start them right now.
It's what you're thinking.
Exactly.
Lose El Cheapo vacations. Get out there and do it, man.
We're gonna start a travel agency.
We talked about that. Remember? And you were talking. If my children were listening, boy, could they ever tell you stories about. We had a piggy bank. I don't even know if we have time for all this stuff.
Got about a minute and a half.
Okay. Always travel with a piggy bank. Still have the piggy bank. It was the original piggy bank was stolen in New York City, and that was a crush. But what happened was I used to have a piggy bank, and I had the restaurant motel, and I always put change in the thing, and the kids would know that once the piggy bank started filling up, Dad, let's go on a trip. And they all thought it was a great idea until they were on it and realized it was mostly peanut butter and jelly. and because we had no credit cards. Back then we didn't have that. We didn't, when the money ran out, the trip ran out. There were times when we were, Russell, Dad, do I have to really go, get $2 worth of gas and dimes? Yeah, that's for you. Go out and do the dimes. But once again, it's in the books, and I don't know how else better to say it, man. Do it. Put it in the books.
But you're really laughing. That must have been some of your best times.
Absolutely, yeah. And they still crucify me. So I see the time is up. Terry, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about some of my stuff here. It's great, and an opportunity to talk a little bit more about where I've come from and what I've done and why we're doing what we're doing. So thank you so much.
And this is Make a Change on 94.3 FM, The Talker. I think the big lesson we've all learned today is that the change starts with you.
Yes.
And that is it. And it can't start anywhere else. Don't sit on your butt and wait for it. Get off your butt and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions for Terry, give her a call, 866-646-3374, or check out MaderiClinicals.com. This is Make a Change on 94.3 FM, The Talker. Lou, thank you so much.
You betcha. Thanks for having me here.